Hey guys, just wanted to hop on here and give you a quick reminder. Our first drop for 2026 is live. In this drop, we've brought back our classic tees, the ones that started this movement, as well as we've added some of our oversized tees option, so you gotta check it out. To get yours today, hop over to our website, allergic2avg.com, and go get yours. Now back to the lot. All right, so welcome back to another Tune In Tuesday. And man, I will say, I just hope that you are getting as much joy and value receiving this and hearing this, tuning in on Tuesdays, and as I would say, as I am. I mean, I've been really enjoying getting back to the consistency, and just the feedback alone has been a reminder. And so I want to go back into another episode, another session here live for you at the headquarters, and just really get back to a ground level, a foundation of understanding. You know, Allergic to Average, as you know, or maybe you're new to it, this is way more than just a clothing brand. You know, obviously we got products. Actually, shout out to one of our newest. You can get it at our website, allergic2avg.com. Get you one of these. We call it the go-getter mug, right? For the doers, a daily reminder right here. So anyways, check that out. But beyond the products, you know, this is a mindset movement, and this is a movement of individuals who are continuing to level up in the way that they think, in the way that they show up, in the way that, even before all of that, the way that they believe that they can and they will be able to be the difference, right? So exploring that, you know, Tune In Tuesdays, to the public settings for me, to working with young people in schools and colleges, is really a big desire of mine, and helping people to, you know, we talked about discovery last week. And so really just discovering, what does this look like? Because so much of what is talked about and what I share in Allergic to Average is not what you grew up being taught in school, most people being taught in your home, and even to the level of advancements and intelligence and even AI that we have today. Most people aren't talking about what this looks like to really shape yourself to, you know, when you hear me talk about cause and effect, what does that look like for you? How do you get into creating from cause, from the inside, and allowing the effects, what we see and what we take on and what we experience every day, to really be the byproduct of how you're allowing your heart and your mind, your beliefs, all these things that I talk about. And so I want to take that to another level in today's live, and just get you to see that, hey, like, this isn't for me about motivation. I'm not here to motivate you. I would love to inspire you, but this isn't to hype you up, right? This is really a reminder of your identity, the identity of you, who I truly believe you were created to be. When we talk about, you know, so much of the church and religion talks about, you know, God and, you know, whoever you say that God is and your relationship to it, across any of those labels, or, you know, what that may be for you, is understanding that, you know, that idea of God is really coming back to what love is. Because I think any religion and any God that comes back to this understanding of truth is really God represents love. And so if we were to even just take out the word God, you know, and we were to exchange that and put that in with love, that's what we're talking about, right? That's what the most important, what we were made for, what we were made to do, what we were made to get back to, what you are allowed to experience to the highest level, it's all about. And that's really what so much of being the difference, not being the average that we see around us every day in our world, in our society, on social media. It's allowing yourself to level up and to get to the next level, to a deeper level, to a more sustained level, to a bigger level. I could use so many things there, because love is what allows us to do that. So I'm going to expand into that even more so. And so I just wanted this to be, again, a reminder of who you are, and taking you back to really what is the truth about you, right? This should be a call to decide differently. no matter what you've been told, no matter what you've experienced, right? I want to bring us back to truth. And so I have 4 truths I want to explore and really bring to you today. And so the first one is like realizing that, this world, when we look around us and when we look at even you as an individual, you don't lack talent. Our world doesn't lack talent, right? We actually lack decision. And as I've gotten older and I've been through a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different situations and a lot of different decisions to make, still making decisions, right? Decisions for a lot of people, especially when we look at the average person, is it's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing for people to make a decision. And even more so when it comes to deciding on who they can, who they will, who they want to be, right? And so even for you, right? How many times have you left something up to just the chance of, oh, maybe it will, maybe at some point it can, instead of deciding? Because often we feel like we need permission or we need further evidence before we can actually make a decision and decide, hey, this is who I'm going to be, or this is what I'm going to do. This is how I want to see this implemented or changed. And so we got to get back into realizing that you don't lack talent, you don't lack resource, you don't lack opportunity. Often you lack just making a decision. And I speak from experience, right? And I'm still in a season where I'm having to upgrade my decision and reaffirm and recommit to who I've decided I want to be inwardly so that I can express that outwardly. And so I wanted to also bring it back to, in this movement of allergic to average, this isn't about being better than anybody else, right? To be allergic to the average is not some kind of egotistic or boast on, oh, you're average, I'm not, or they're average, right? But it's a separation and you understanding who you're deciding to be, because, when you are allergic to average, you get more and more into the understanding that you have to refuse to betray who you've been created to be. You have to actually continue to say, no, I'm not going to just be who, my parents said I have to be, or who this world, or who my friends, or who the society or the city I'm from. Like, you are refusing to neglect and betray, that actual understanding of what somebody else or what the world or what people have told you, or who maybe even who this false way of thinking that you thought you had to be, and you actually are tapping into and continuing to grow and explore. And like I talked about last week, continue to be on this discovery, this self-discovery of who you were actually created to be, who you can actually be, right? So average is easy, right? Doing what comes easy, or following just the natural feeling of what you do or don't feel like doing, what other people say, what other people are doing. Like, average is easy, but the allergic to average get into alignment, and that is rare, right? To go back daily into finding ways to commit and to align into something deeper, which I think the core of that and the foundation of that would be love, creating from that, right? When we talk about the grind, working from that, building from that, taking on the work that needs to be done and honoring from that, right? That is an alignment that more and more you and I have to come back to, in our world desperately needs, right? And so the first truth I want to talk about is your mindset is your future. Okay, your mindset, which also embodies your heart set, right? The heart and the mind of you, which you'll always hear me talk about with allergic to average, that is your future. And so you don't rise to, you will not rise to your potential, what you could do, what you could be, what the possibilities are. We often fall to our mindset, to the level of maturity and the mental activity of where we are within our mindset, within our heart set. And so your thoughts, they're not neutral. They're not just these things that happen in your head or that, float around within your mind and have no effect, right? You probably, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, I talk about how much your thoughts actually develop a chemical release that brings you into feeling that actually that feeling starts to become something that dictates how you're showing up. Another way of saying that, your thoughts are actually producing an electrical and energetic charge that is allowing you to show up in a more effective, in a more bold way, or in a limited, broken, scarce, fear-based way, right? It's the power of your thoughts, right? And so if you've heard me talk about it before, I'm not going to get too much into that so much of that stems from our beliefs and realizing that, hey, what you believe to be true, what you actually come back to in your understanding of what is possible, because I believe it should be and it could be, because this is the more powerful thing. That's why I believe that love should be, at the core of one of our most anchored, rooted, foundational thoughts, that love is powerful. And I'll get into that in my next truth. But, this goes back to understanding that your thoughts, when they're not rooted in love and the power of it and the truth of it, they're subject to anything else that can kind of hijack those thoughts and say, no, if you're loving, or if you show love, or if you give love to you, that's cute, that's a good idea, but that's not enough. And so often, most people are really, maybe they like the idea that love is true and it's strong and it's bold and it's really what everybody needs, but they don't believe that love is actually real and true enough to actually change who they are, that's actually what they need, and that's actually what everybody else needs around it. That's actually what can bring growth and a shift in the world that we experience. And I'll tell you right now, more than ever, right, that is actually the truth that we need to continue to remind ourselves of and continue to come back to produce thoughts of love, to produce these feelings of what love can be. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can explore that. I'm not going to get too much into that, but it's realizing that, hey, what you rehearse internally, okay, within your heart and within your mind, okay, because again, your thoughts aren't neutral. They actually play a major role, right? If the scripture talks about as a man thinks, so is he. As you think, what you think, another way of saying that, what you rehearse, okay, internally is what you become and what you live externally. So that is really, I always go back to cause and effect, right? The level of cause is really what you're rehearsing internally between your heart and your mind. And there's a lot of ways that that's affected. That rehearsal and what you play, your mental activity, is actually what you become and you live externally. And so the world, the average, really thinks that's flip-flop. They really think that, the role of what I'm seeing or how things are playing out around me is gonna, that's going to really have an effect on how I feel inwardly. But to change how you are experiencing the world through your conscious mind, that actually starts inwardly. And we can be in the same room, we can be in the same situations, we can be in the same city, workplace, you name it, and have two completely different experiences because of where we're at internally, what we rehearse, and what we allow our mental activity to come back to, and what we allow ourselves to continue to be reminded of. And so that's intentionality, right? That's alignment. And so we have to remember that. And so again, going back to your mindset as your future, your inner dialogue is designing your life. So the thoughts you're carrying, the beliefs, whether they're consciously on your mind or whether they're just things that you've thought, or they're beliefs you hold, like I'm not good enough, or the world is really just a selfish, ugly place. That inner dialogue is what is actually designing your life daily. And so we have to change that. And really the only way to change that inner dialogue and your beliefs and what you think, is not fair or where you've been hurt is to really allow yourself to be kind of disrupted with those false ways of thinking, those limiting beliefs, by the truth of what love is and what it can do and what it can be. And so with allergic to average, this means you don't just let unchallenged, just thoughts and these beliefs, run your life. You have to train your thinking. You have to train your beliefs in what you actually understand to be true and real. And at times there's things that you will attach to upgrade and to be better in when it comes to your beliefs, when it comes to your thinking. And you may not fully be convinced, but as you train your thinking, as you train your thoughts, right, this allows you to upgrade and to be more and more as it looks, as it would appear to be somebody that is different, somebody that is the difference, and that's who you were created to be. So if you don't train your thinking, it trains you, right? If you don't make a choice and you leave it to chance, the chances are the world will have an impact on how you think, how you show up. And so much of this is, rooted in fear, the opposite of love, which you hear me talk about often. And so you don't choose your thoughts, the world will choose them for you, is what I'm trying to say, right? If you don't actually make that conscious decision to say, this is actually what I believe, this is actually what the world needs, right? In the most loving, in the most allergic to average ways, not in an ego, centered way, then the world will choose your thoughts for you. And so I want to remind you of that. I want you to really think about, hey, what are ways that I can continue to train? This is the most important thing we have, right? The most important and the most brilliant and beautiful gift that we have as human beings, you and I, is to become conscious and aware and intentional about training ourselves to upgrade and to get out of this false way of thinking and allowing the world to dictate who we are and how we show up. And instead, you take charge, right? You get back to creator, you get back to cause, and conducting yourself in a way that allows you to upgrade and not just be a product of the world, but a product of who you were created to be in truth. And so, truth number 2, I wanted to bring you into love, okay? Because I talk a lot about love, and there's so many different examples or ideas of what love is or what it could be, and most people, are not convinced that love is the answer, but love is the source, right? It is the power source for you and I. It's not this soft idea, okay? So I wanted you to hear that. This soft idea, this cute, fluffy thing that that would be cool. We all need love. No, love is, are you hearing me? It is the power source. It is the thing that we all want. It is the thing we all need. It looks different. It looks, it has different dimensions to it. Like there's different ways to explain it, but when we look at, there's really only one of two things that we're contracting from, that we're responding from, that we're responding in a sense of how we show up, we're reacting to. It's love or it's fear. And the difference I want to show you that we see played out in our world, whether that can be government and politics, whether that could be your workplace, whether that could be a family dynamic, whether that be the city around you, oh my gosh, there's so many different degrees. But when it's fear-based, it contracts, okay? It literally keeps things small. It literally it tries to keep things controlled. It tries to keep things in this box of that's what fear wants to do, okay? But love, it expands. So if you've ever worked for somebody or been around somebody, and it almost feels like they're always trying to belittle you and make you smaller and talking down, or maybe just the way that their attitude, that's fear. That's a fear-based tactic. That's maybe a leader or an individual that is dominated with this fear approach, because to the core, in the inner dialogue, that's what they're responding from. So that's what they project, right? But love expands, okay? And love allows people to expand and to become more and to continue to grow in all these different dimensions of what expanding could look like. Love expands. Leadership that is led with love, it allows people to expand. It allows things to be stretched out and to go into imperfection and make mistakes, because that's what love allows us to be and do. And so love clarifies. It makes things more and more clear. It allows us to become more and more clear on what's true and what is actually important in our life. That's why we need it. Love stabilizes. Okay, in so many different shakeable situations and scenarios and in the world, when we look across what's going on here, and love actually brings us back to feeling more stabilized. And it's really the stability that we all need in our life and in our world. And so fear will ask for control. That's what it wants. Whether it be, again, in an individual, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be in an environment, in a workplace, in a city. That's what fear wants. Fear wants, it's asking for control. That's really one of the main things that fear is asking to be really powered by is control. And we can see that in history. We can see that in results of leadership and some of the most shitty things that we've seen happen in society or in mankind history. It was through control. But love asks for trust, right? Love will ask for trust, like in a marriage, in a relationship of any degree of, investing in somebody or taking the risk. Love will ask, will you trust me? And so this allergic to average lens, it means that, most people choose fear because that's what feels familiar. And when we look into our world, when we look around why, so many things are dominated by hate or greed or anger or jealousy or any of these quote unquote evil things, it's because that's really what is the most familiar. And even though that's not what most people want, we will naturally choose by default what is more familiar, because that is actually part of our design, right? But we have the ability to break out of. So we would rather choose something that is familiar than something that is unknown and actually better. And so a quick story, I remember reading a story about a young, child around 2 years old, and the police officers and CPS got involved, and they were coming to take this child because he had been physically abused by his mother. And when these caregivers and police officers showed up, the 2-year-old little boy was clinging on and attached and wouldn't let go and was crying from the mother. The very person that was abusing this child, hurting and harming and bringing fear into this child's life, that was still the most familiar. That was still the one thing that child knew to be what felt like, even though it was the most unsafe at that moment, because it's familiar. A lot of times we feel like it's the safe, it's the best. And so we have to break out of that, right? Because again, the average chooses what feels so familiar. But love requires, and this is why it's a challenge for us to upgrade. Love requires responsibility. It requires being patient and being present, right? And when it's hard to look at how can I do that with others? How can I be that with others? How many times do you need that? How many times have I needed that, right? That's the question we got to come back to. Love requires courage. Courage is doing that thing, taking that step, going to the next level, and whatever area you could possibly imagine. Love requires courage, because courage is you doing that thing, going for it, not fully being ready, often even times feeling a little bit scared inside, but you do it and you go for it because you believe and you know that this is for the betterment of you and for others, whatever that looks like. I'm giving you a lot of just big ideas behind these concepts, right? But it plays into so many, I would say every scenario and everything that we take on in life. And so, love isn't passive. It's not just this like, but if I'm too loving, people will run over me. People will take advantage of me. That's not what love is, right? It's the most disciplined choice that you could ever make. It's a lot of people actually, they wouldn't use the word, but it's one of the most difficult. It's one of the hardest things. And that's why it's the foundation, one of the core four of allergic to average. That's why love is such an importance. And it's something that we always come back to, because that's what the harder thing is to do. Average is easy, but to get into alignment, to get into a dedication and a discipline of choosing love, that's not a passive thing. Are you kidding me? That's one of the most heroic and inspiring things that we could do. And so I wanted to remind you that we're always creating, right? We are creators. That's who, by our design, we were created to create. And so whether you're doing that consciously or by default, unconsciously, just like, you're still creating, then that can be out of fear or that could be out of love, right? And so, average, this idea of what that is and what we see, that's just autopilot. That's that person that just kind of they don't really do anything. They don't really have anything to offer to the world, to their kids, to their family, they just show up and they're just just going with it. And we have enough of that, right? But that's what average exists on. It's just kind of like, you don't want to make a decision. You don't want to step up. You don't want to do the harder thing. You don't want to, show any courage. You don't but intentionality, allergic to average And to be intentional, that lives at cause. That means you're deciding over and over and over again to do the small things and eventually to do the bigger things, right? And so to be a culture creator, to be a conscious creator, to be allergic to average, you don't wait for evidence that, like I talked about last week, you're not waiting for somebody to discover how loving, how sweet, how kind, how creative, how cool, how great you are. You're not waiting for that evidence. You can't. You become the evidence. You become the evidence that this type of kindness, this type of joy, this type of peace, this type of love is actually what our world needs more of, right? Don't wait for the evidence and the approval and the permission that oh yeah, you are sweet and you do have a big heart. Like, no, you become the evidence, okay? And so the next truth I wanted to just hit on is the world chooses average. By default, that is the dominating force of what we see going on. And again, because that is fear-based thinking. That is so often what is most familiar in our world, because it's easy to use, it's easy to control, it's easy to see, like that's what so much of us grew up under, is this fear-based way of thinking. A lot of the past generation, that's all they knew. There wasn't a higher way to be elevated. And so you must choose to be different, because the world will choose the average. It will choose the bare minimum. It would choose, the path of least resistance, and I don't have to do too much, right? And so we have to get back in the understanding that, average always, wants to avoid discomfort. We don't like to be, often uncomfortable. We don't like discomfort. We actually naturally will find, because of the design of our brain and survival and to make things more easy, we avoid discomfort. And average often it waits for permission. Again, sometimes to be great, to do good, to be kind, to be loved, to be the difference, right? In any capacity. Average likes to blend in. It likes to just kind of, because it's easier. Again, it's easier to just, the average stays quiet. It's easy to just, I don't need to say anything. I don't need to. But when we step into this difference of being allergic to that, right? Allergic to the average, you speak when it's uncomfortable. And again, at the core of that is love. At the core of that, it's not out of ego and pride and, let me tell you. No. When something's not right, when something's not just, when something's unfair, you speak out of love, even when it's uncomfortable. You act even when it's inconvenient, right? Like you see somebody struggling and maybe somebody's broke down on the side of the road, or maybe somebody dropped something. Like, there's all these different examples, or maybe it's just a situation in life, and you act because you can, and you're able to, even when it's inconvenient. Average people don't want to be inconvenienced, right? The allergic to average, the difference makers, the true heroes in our world today, they lead even when it's lonely, because they know the power of that, and that's going to allow them to continue to get to the next level and to make a difference, to be the difference. And so comfort is the most expensive drug on this planet, right? It's not necessarily an actual, we could talk about meth or cocaine or heroin but if we really look at it, even before it becomes to the degree of those things, alcohol, sex, like these things that people become addicted and overwhelmed and controlled by, it actually stems from this comfort. Comfort is the most expensive. It will take the most from you in this life. It will destroy the greatness that each one of us has within us, the true beauty. And so we have to understand that, okay? We have to get out of what's comfortable, what's convenient, and especially on an individual level, because that's the most expensive drug. That's the most expensive thing that takes and steals and destroys, is trying to be comfortable and get out of inconvenience and get out of, stepping up and being the doer that can actually get people and help people to get to the next level. And it starts in the smallest ways, okay? So I don't want us to overthink it. And so the last thing I want to end on right here is, look, you are the difference that you've been waiting for. Again, when I talked about last week, it was, a lot of times we feel like, when I get more money, or whenever I get that opportunity, or when I get that person to see how great I am, or how sweet I am, or how how just good I am, like then that things will be different. Then my life will actually be different. You are the difference that you have actually been waiting for. And so, your mindset, it shapes your movement. And so we have to become more and more clear on what are your thoughts about you? Where do those need to be upgraded? What is the actual truth about you? Because your mindset will shape your movement. And that's why we are Allergic to Average is a mindset movement. We're a movement of individuals that think differently, that move them into a different way of showing up and continuing to lead and explore and demonstrate what could actually be. Because love, it fuels leadership. First and foremost, for yourself, how you are leading yourself to show up every day. But then that love also fuels allowing others to get out of the darkness, to get out of the fear, to get out of the false ways of thinking, right? These illusions that they've been caught in and stuck in. Love fuels that. And so we have to understand that it always comes back to that. Your heart actually sustains purpose, right? Which actually produces this and actually allows us to feel what it is to be more, to give more. And that comes through the heart of understanding that you are purpose. You're here for a purpose. Your example of life, what you are here to demonstrate, is actually sustained in the elements and dimensions of what love is. And so we have to come back to that, right? And your thought directs, these outcomes of where you can go and what you can do and what you can actually achieve. And along that journey, how you can actually bring people into different ways of seeing and believing and setting out what used to be and getting rid of that and creating something that is actually now and what is actually true, right? And so that's what we have to come back to, because the world doesn't change by opinions, okay? The world isn't going to change because of opinions that he or she or they or this whatever. It's not going to change by opinion, but the world actually changes culture, workplaces, homes, cities, right? As humanity, we change because of embodied people that are embodying what it is to create, what it is to love, what it is to go out and do the grind, take on shifting and changing and the work that is involved, the action that is required. Like, this is where the world actually shifts and changes, okay? It's not your opinion about, we should be, but it's about individuals, you becoming somebody that's embodying and empowered and actually challenging yourself daily to live that out and to be that demonstration of what it looks like to be different from the average that we see so often. And so stop waiting for the world to shift. Stop waiting for your world to just shift somehow. We wake up one day, right? And take yourself back to this truth that you are the shift. As you decide, as you declare, as you become more and more clear and you practice that daily, you build the evidence and the proof and the truth that you are the shift. So wherever you're at, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing day by day, remember, you are the difference. You are the shift. So we can't sit back and wait for this world to just shift and change. You are the change. That's what the Allergic to Average represents. That's what this mindset movement is all about. And so I wanted to remind you and end it on this, right? You're not average, okay? You're not average. You're not just an ordinary person. You're not late. You're not behind. No matter what you've built this belief of trying to figure out of, no, I think I'm look at this part, like that's comparison. You're not average. You're not ordinary. You're not late. You're not powerless, okay? And so often that's what we get led to believe, and we start to believe a belief system around that. But I want you to think on purpose, think with purpose, which is to love. It's to be that light. It's to be the change that fear is so often dominating and demonstrating. You are the difference. So I want you to love boldly, okay? Again, love is not passive. It takes you to, it requires you to guard your heart, to guard your mind, to grow that, and to guard it against the fear that so often tries to hijack and create this demonstration that, that's just who you are. That's just all you're going to be. You're just average. Who do you think you are? You're not good enough. You have to guard your heart, and you have to decide to be the difference daily.